to you. How are you?
Great. Okay, so I really loved Red State. I thought it was an awesome movie, hats off.
Red State, thank you.
Red State, yeah. So among all of the horrifying situations I could pick, I think my most favorite part of that movie was John Goodman's monologue at the very end, where he's talking about the hound dogs and all that. And that shit's just brilliant. And I just kind of wonder where...
Wrote it?
Yeah. No, I wonder, like, where did that come from? Like, what inspired that? Like, what? It's just cool.
What inspired the speech?
It's cool as hell.
Honestly, like, necessity is always the mother of invention, as they said. Originally, the script for Red State ended a lot differently and was going to be a lot more expensive than we could have raised to do on what we were doing at the low budget. So I had to write a different ending, and so that's what the ending became. That ending, John Goodman's speech, exists solely to make up for the fact that I didn't have enough money to show you the apocalypse, which is what the original ending was. The original ending of the script is Abe and Cooper. Has anyone, if you haven't seen it, fucking spoilers. The ending of the movie is Abe and Cooper facing down John Goodman, and you're hearing the blaring horns, and you're like, holy shit, it's the end of the fucking world and shit. We're gonna see the end of the fucking world. This movie just took a weird fucking turn. And Michael Parks is right in John Goodman's face. He's going, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me. Then we kind of pull up high and then cut to the debriefing scene where John Goodman's talking to his bosses, and then he does that speech you're talking about. But where it originally ended was somewhere different. I was writing that script and sending pages to my friend Malcolm Ingram. Malcolm, a good friend of mine for many, many years. Gay as the day is long. Which is awesome because this guy forms a whole different worldview than my own that I ever get to see. So Malcolm was the dude, for example, who he had already sat down and interviewed Fred Phelps. He was making this documentary years ago called Small Town Gay Bar. Wonderful little documentary that was about, wonderful little documentary about how tough it is to be gay and where is it, rural Mississippi. It's, you create your own family and stuff like that. How much courage it takes to simply park your car and walk 20 feet into the bar because you don't know if you're going to get shot from the woods by somebody who doesn't particularly like the idea of cocksucking or something like that. So, fantastic doc. In it, he talks to Fred Phelps, the guy who runs the Westboro Baptist Church, and he interviewed him. And so I'm watching the interview in Malcolm's doc, and I was like, you sat down with that fucking animal, man? What was that like? I had no fucking idea. He's going, it was weird, it was creepy, it was a little scary, man. And there's about 5, maybe 10 minutes in the documentary itself. I said, how long did you talk to him? He goes, like an hour. I said, let me see that fucking raw footage. Please, let me see it. And he goes, all right, he sent me the disc, and I watched Malcolm's interview with Fred Phelps, and it was fucking terrifying. It was like hearing hate personified, incarnate. Just a dude who's saying all these weird, wrong things, particularly in relation to something that is actually a positive thing. For all intents and purposes, Christianity, as devised by the guy who came up with it, the guy it's named after, wasn't devised to take your money and shame you into not fucking and following orders and shit. It's about helping other people and whatnot. And being Christian used to be a good thing. So suddenly, here's me looking at this guy who's a quote-unquote Christian, only in name, who's talking such horse shit and such hate about the gay community, just really about everything. Their whole organization, they started with God Hates Fags, they're those people, but now it's become God Hates the USA, God hates fucking everything. God probably hated the Avengers. I'm sure they had a few. God don't like much according to those guys. So I'm watching this interview, man, and I was like, oh, now I called up Malcolm afterwards. I said, Malcolm, you gotta make a fucking movie about this guy. He's like, I just did. I was like, not a documentary, man, make a fucking horror movie. This guy'd be an amazing horror movie villain, right? He's like so fucking conservative, right-wing, and religious and shit. Like he'd be the flip of all those devil worship movies we saw as kids and whatnot. And he goes, I'm not gonna do that, that sounds stupid. And I was like, well, fuck you, I'll do it, So I start building Red State in my head based on seeing that interview that Malcolm did with Phelps. So when I finally, for years, it was kind of stewing, and I talked to people about it. I said, I want to make this horror movie one day. I have to do that. I have to talk about shit out loud to make them happen. Because a lot of the ideas I have aren't very commercial and nothing that people want to line up to see or even make. So I have to see the fucking field way early, thread the needle way early out. So I was talking about Red State for years before we were even close to doing it, because I have to get that momentum going so that when I'm finally like, it's time to do it, boom, we can do it. So I talked about it, but I hadn't started writing it. And after I was done writing Zack and Miri Make a Porno, I was waiting for Seth Rogen to call up and say whether or not he was going to do the movie. It was horrible. I was like waiting to be invited to the fucking prom, man. Took me right back to high school, but instead of this, I'm fucking worrying about what some chick wanted. I was worrying about what another fat guy wanted, and that was weird. So I'm waiting for him. I said, I can't do this. Like 2 days, I'm waiting for the phone to ring, looking at the fucking phone. I said, I can't do this, man. I gotta preoccupy myself. So I started writing Red State. I wrote 15 pages of it, and I find Malcolm on iChat. And I said, hey man, you got a second? He goes, yeah, what's up? And I said, I want you to read something. I shoot him the pages. And he goes, oh shit, you're writing Red State. He's going, this is what it's gonna be? I was like, I'm thinking. And he's like, well, keep going, man. It's fucking cool. So I'd write another few pages, and I'd fucking send it to him, email it to him, I'd chat it to him, and stuff like that. So he was kind of my cheerleader the whole time I was writing it. Like, you know, he was the guy that inspired it, kind of, with his interview with Phelps. And he was my cheerleader as I was writing it, because he was saying all the right shit. He was just like, oh, it's saying like anything else you've ever done. It's really cool. It's like you're pushing at a boundary here. It's like, there are no chainsaw bombing this at all. He's like, oh, you gotta keep going. This is amazing. So I got to the point in the movie right there, and right where, you know, fucking Michael Parks, where the Aiden Cooper character is facing off with John Goodman and right in his face. And so I sent those last pages to Malcolm. That's where I stopped. And Malcolm's like, what happens, dude? I was like, I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I've been writing this thing in such a fucking tricky way. Like, anytime, the way I wrote Red State was anytime I figured I knew where the story was going to go, that meant that everyone would know where the story was going to go. And that's my least favorite part of going to a movie, when I know exactly what's going to fucking happen. It's because we've seen so many fucking stories before. There's only so many fucking formulas that they work with. So I didn't want to do that. I said, anytime that I know where the story's going, that means the audience is going to know. So just jump. Just change the fucking story. Just when they think it's going here, just fucking tell this story instead. And they'll catch up. Like, you know, people will fill in the gaps and shit. But I think they'll appreciate the fact that you surprise them more than anything else. They'll let go of the linear in favor of the adventure and stuff. So, and by doing that all the whole time, I've written myself into this weird fucking corner where I was like, I don't know what happens next. Like, Malcolm's like, what happens next? I was like, I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I've kind of written myself into a corner. Where do we go? And he's like, where are you thinking? And I was like, apocalypse? And he goes, really? I was like, I was thinking about it. And he was just like, you ain't going to do Revelations. And I said, I don't know, it might be a cool way to end it. He's going, yeah, but that'd be a cool way to end it. You're not cool. And I was just like, you know what, Malcolm, fuck you. Maybe I am cool. Maybe this should end with the Revelations and shit. Maybe it should be the apocalyptic ending. He's like, you ain't got the balls to fucking put an apocalyptic ending on this movie. I said, fuck you, I will too. And I hung up and I wrote the apocalyptic ending to the movie. Always meant to be more of a placeholder. But this was the original ending. So the ending that you saw is Michael Parks in John Goodman's face. He says, shoot me. And then we go to court later on where John Goodman's talking to his superiors, rather. And then we hear what happened. We don't see what happened. What happened in the script instead was at that moment, Aiden Cooper is in John Goodman's face like, shoot me. And then suddenly his chest exploded and his head exploded. And then behind him, some of the other 5 pointers, their chests started exploding and their heads started exploding and shit. And then the thunderous, like the wah, the horns got louder and louder. The moon turned to sackcloth. There was fucking hellfire raining down, like fucking, what is it called? Brimstone, thank you. Raining brimstone, hailing brimstone. The earth cracked. John Goodman turned around and saw the agents he were with, their heads start exploding, their chests are blowing out and shit like that. He finally drops down to the ground, fetal position, kind of holding his head. The cacophony is just louder, 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 and then suddenly it just all goes quiet. And then we go into his POV as he kind of opens his eyes, and only thing we see, we cut to John Goodman, we see his face, and he's fucking wide-eyed and white, and he cut to what he's seeing. There's a gigantic fucking angel dressed in battle armor with a bloody fucking sword, and he's pulling it out of one of the last 5 pointers who drops to the ground. And the angel just looks at John Goodman and goes, shh. and then takes off into the fucking sky. And as John Goodman, not done, and then as John Goodman looks up and watches the angel takes off, he sees the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse cross the sky. Credits. So that was the end of the movie. I'm always sad when people clap because I was like, we didn't do that. So I sent it to Malcolm, and he goes, "This is unfucking believable." He's going, "You're just doing this to prove me wrong." And I was like, maybe, but this is the end of the movie. And then we could never shoot that because it was too expensive. So I wrote that ending instead. But I always felt like I'm going to wait a few years and shit. And once a few years have passed by, I do want to shoot that ending to the movie. If we pull together like maybe 500,000, 750, we can shoot. It's only about 3 minutes, but it's like 3 minutes of special effects of the apocalypse and shit. So when I get bored one day down the road and I'm like, oh, let me reinvestigate fucking Red State, then we can shoot that new ending and release it as like Red State Revelations and take it out again. Shit like that. So yeah, so it'll happen one day, I think, if I live long enough. It's all about setting up shit for yourself to do even down the road. So often we're concentrating on the moment, making shit happen right now, but you gotta fucking make sure that there's shit to do later on. Because unfortunately, life is not fucking, it's not like a movie. It's not like you win a little battle and fucking the credits roll and shit. Like you win a little battle and then the next day a new battle begins and then fucking 10 more battles and shit. It never really ends, and you don't want it to fucking end. So you want to set up shit for yourself so you're not bored later on down the road, and that's what I've been doing lately. Setting up a lot of stuff that like will pop later on, seeding the earth so that something else happens later on. Because one thing I always hated when I just made films, the fucking time between films, when you were just like powered down like C-3PO, just waiting for something to fucking do and stuff. And now it's like I don't just do film, I like to spin a lot of plays, so I'm never bored. There's always something I could turn to if this thing's over, this thing's just beginning or already in progress or set up and ready to go. So that's what I've been doing. It's been kind of productive. Are we good? I'm sorry, but that was the